I am Zoltar, the all-knowing, all-seeing, all-powerful. I shall dispense my wisdom at the touch of a button. The greatest pleasure in life is doing what people say you can't do. Approach and be enlightened. It takes a big man to cry, but it takes a bigger man to laugh at that man. You cannot get ahead while getting even.
Hi everyone, it's 314 React here, and this week we're looking at another cool NVIDIA demo. This week it's Zoltar the Magnificent, which was released on February 1st, 2001, and interestingly, despite being released after Wolfman, which was for GeForce 4, this one is for GeForce 3 and comes just after Chameleon. It's 186 megabytes. So let's dive in and take a look at the README. So benefit from the wisdom of Zoltar the Magnificent, an animated fortune teller. Each press of the fortune button will deliver a critical snippet of advice from this master of mystic power. Don't dawdle though, because Zoltar is quickly bored. So this takes advantage of the GeForce 3's nfiniteFX engine, which I think the GeForce 4 has as well. Programmable Vertex shader is used to define the motion of Zoltar's face. The face mesh alone is comprised of approximately, that comma looks like it's in the wrong place. It's either 200,000 or 20,000 triangles. I imagine it's 20,000. The motion of the face is intricate enough to see wrinkles in the cheeks and forehead. Even his eye sockets will deform slightly with the movement of his eyes. On the pixel side of the nfiniteFX engine, Zoltar's face is using a combination of color maps, specular maps, normal maps, and a Phong lookup map to create the wrinkles in his skin and beard stubble on his face. A combination of a reflection map with a reflectivity mask work together to get the right twinkle in his eyes. So this is similar tech to what we saw with the Chameleon. It's probably the same tech behind it, the same code behind it, with a Phong lookup that we saw on the Chameleon and bumps and normal maps, all that kind of stuff. So here's the controls. The left mouse button rotates, the right mouse button zooms in, the navigate button attaches the mouse to the camera or the light source, the draw style button selects between points, wireframe, solid or detailed rendering, and the Gemo truth button gets a new fortune from Zoltar, which is the space key, but it doesn't say it here. And I think this is the first NVIDIA demo that was like a head, or trying to recreate a human face. Yeah, it is. Because after this, you start to get stuff like Timbri, Mad Mod Mike, and then the human head, 2007, which was trying to make a really lifelike human face, which must build off the tech from Zoltar. Later down the line, 2013, you have lifelike human face rendering, and then the tech demos unfortunately wane off a bit after that point. So yeah, this is kind of the first face tech demo from NVIDIA, which makes this even more exciting. And of course, like all the other demos we've looked at, this has a batch file that starts the program off pretty much exactly the same as Chameleon. So it calls the message box and then fires off Zoltar with the NMB model. Then it has full screen, the X resolution, Y resolution, bit depth, I think the Z buffer depth, and then 0, which from Chameleon we never found out what anything further from these do. So I've set it to 1920 by 1080. This time, interestingly, there's no options for the refresh rate. The only one I've seen that has control over the refresh rate of the monitor so far is the Grass demo, which is even older than this, which is bizarre. So let's dive in and see what Zoltar has to say for himself. So here he is.
I am Zoltar, the all-knowing, all-seeing, all-powerful. I shall dispense my wisdom at the touch of a button.
So this one's quite funky, and I believe that's a voice of the dev, probably sat at his desk recording that line, which is really good. I quite like it. It's well acted, I think. Let's have a look at the points. Yeah, judging by the amount of points and lines,
Approach and be enlightened.
I would say that this is probably made of 20,000 triangles, not 200,000. So the README just has added an extra 0 on the end. And as you can see, the majority of the triangle density is held seemingly around his face and his mouth, eyeballs, the gem up here, Let's have a look at the solid. So here it gives us a good look at the mesh. This gives us a good look at the amount of detail that's added in with normals. So, so as you can see here, it's quite a relatively low poly mesh around the face and stuff like that. Not much detail in the skin and eyes and stuff like that. Of course, when you put this view on and look at all the normal maps and specular maps, it just adds all that extra detail. You can zoom right in here.
The greatest pleasure in life is doing what people say you can't do.
See, look at that. So there's all these little bumps on his skin, all that detail added from the normal map. But of course, none of it is there on the actual mesh. It's all just very, very cleverly added in.
Approach and be enlightened.
As you can see, there's quite a bit of model detail in the eyes and teeth. Gives you a better idea by using points. There you go. That's kind of freaky. It's like something out of Westworld. The eyeballs are really round. The teeth have tons of geometric detail. But yeah, look at that. Just gives the real illusion of depth, and all the wrinkles on the face and the cloth up here. And the little bits on the nose, the pores on the nose and everything like that. The interesting thing is this back bit of the mesh seems to be missing some sort of detail. So it's just not sampling any of the textures from there at all. Which gives it a bit of a weird illusion.
It takes a big man to cry, but it takes a bigger man to laugh at that man.
So it's kind of like he's wearing like a magic cloak that's see-through from behind. But it's just a rendering bug, really. So let's have a look at navigation. So you can just move him around spherically, or you can move the light around.
You cannot get ahead while getting even.
Interesting thing is when you move the light really far away, you start to see artifacts in the lighting because it's a SDR pipeline. So it looks like there's like clipping to black and some sort of weird light leakage here where it's still reflecting off the bump map. So where there's no light, there's still kind of some details of the bump map coming through. Let's move the light back around here. Because it's using normal maps, like a full XYZ bump map, it has all of the normal facing data. Each pixel is pointing in a certain direction because of the normal map's definition. So this allows for a much, much greater range of detail on the skin. And so you get all the wrinkles around the eyes.
Approach and be enlightened.
All those extra details on the cloth there, the symbols on the clothing. And of course it's got the animations there, using the Vertex shader that we've seen before with the Wolfman last week, which allows the vertices to be moved and manipulated and without wobbling, and allows a lot of detail in the animations as well. And if we actually zoom out, you start to go beyond some sort of rendering frustum here, so he kind of just disappears.
Approach and be enlightened.
There's always a few bugs in these demos, and it gives them a charm. So he's got his Doctor Strange NVIDIA necklace there. It's kind of creepy. It's another one I'd love to see a modern-day ray-traced version of. And I believe all these animations are stored in files and loaded up from what I've seen in the file structure, so we can have a look through that later. But if we press space...
Approach and be enlightened. Be nice. You need more friends.
Well, that was a bit of a weird animation.
Don't pick at scabs. You'll leave a scar.
So I think he has 6 responses.
Psst. Hey, buddy. Buy NVIDIA. The greatest pleasure in life is doing what people say you can't do. It takes a big man to cry, but it takes a bigger man to laugh at that man. You cannot get ahead while getting even. You have an inferiority complex, but it isn't a very good one.
So I think we've heard all of them now.
Be nice. You need more friends.
That one's a bit weird, the way he moves. So this was what, 2001, 3 years before Half-Life 2. So I wonder if Half-Life 2 used this tech.
don't think it scabs. It'll leave a scar.
Yeah, it must have done.
Psst. Hey, buddy. Buy NVIDIA.
And there you go, you can see in his eyeballs there, the reflectivity. There's a slight seam in the textures there. And then you've got that Phong lookup, which will be a TGA like we saw in the Chameleon, where it's just literally all the colors that Phong can look up without having to actually calculate it, saving a bit on performance. Like, it's creepy now, but running it back then on a CRT, and it's brand new, and how incredible this must have looked in 2001 on a really expensive GeForce 3 or 4, it just would have been ultra creepy, but so cool. It's got the T-Rex sort of vibes from the PS1 demo, where the T-Rex is just walking in the darkness with creepy music. It's got that kind of vibe. These are the kind of tech demos that I really love. So that's had a basic look at him and the things he says. So yeah, we've got the NMB files here. So the NMBs, I think, are the model files, but they also hold animations as well. So we've heard all of these so far. It's interesting that it loads a different model for each one. So the models must have animation data in as well, and it just flicks between them. Not sure what these numbers mean at the end. So this runs on OpenGL because of Glut32 here. It's got the NV convert and to ASCII, which convert NMBs to NMAs. No idea what that is. I'm going to run it though. Okay. The code execution cannot proceed because MS32 DLL was not found. Resolve the program may fix the problem. So I've no idea why you'd want to convert NMBs to ASCIIs, but there you go. Maybe there's a certain way of editing them. I don't even know what NMBs are. You can't load them up in Blender or anything. You've got the greeting animations there, idle animations. What you can do is have a look at the audio. Again, standard WAV files. You've got all of the models here, all varying in size. The bottom limit is the 1 megabyte one here, which is just Zoltar himself, and then it ranges all the way up to 24 megabytes for the greetings one. So I'm guessing that's a lot of animation data, which is really interesting. It must be a really old school way of doing it, where you have to store all the animations in certain ways, and that just exponentially increases the amount of data. And here you got programs, which again is the VXPs that we've seen in prior demos like the Wolfman last week. Let's open these up and take a look. We've got program M underlight face shape 2bones.vxp. Again, very similar to what we were seeing last week, where it's got the registers, the different matrices, projection model views, the directional light, the positions based on the bones, which are stored in registers, and then output colors. You've got the underlight face shape program MC. Not sure what the difference is between those two. Determining texture chords, normals. Then you've got program MCB. These also all have different levels of commenting on them. These ones don't have any comments on them. These ones do. They've just added more comments and added more code in each one. And then finally this one, program MCB underlight face shape mesh anim.vxp. I'm guessing these are all just ones that aren't used, and this is the final one, and these are just left in. So this is the one that has actual mesh animations in it. Vertex registers, normals, text chords, bump maps. I always thought there would be a vertex shader and a pixel shader, but I think they're combined into one thing here. Yeah, this is probably quite beyond me. Calculate tangent space in the light. Calculate. I don't know how it does the animations though. It must run this shader each time it passes an element of the NMB file through it for an animation, and just processes each part of that. That could be why the NMB files have so much data in. So what I've done is leverage some AI here, ChatGPT 5, to give me an explanation of what this code is doing. So this is classic early 2000s NVIDIA Vertex shader that morph blends between two poses, A and B, in object space for position, normal, and binormal. Transform those to I space, reconstructs a tangent to form a TBN frame, and hands the fragment stage everything it needs for per pixel normal map lighting. So yeah, it is, I believe, the vertex and the pixel shader in one file. Morph blending NMBs of two shapes, comes in pairs, position A, position B. There's the weights that are to do with the vertices, and then the shader interpolates between the two keyed shapes. In these demos, animation often mix NMBs, N-way morph blend shape, for expressive deformation. That's what NMB stands for. It's not doing bone skinning. There's no array of bone matrices or per vertex bone indices or weights here, just per vertex. Attributes for the alternate poses. Smooth animation without bones. Morph blending, what you're seeing here, is great for facial or soft tissue motion, or for in-betweening keyed poses when matrix palette counts were limited. So it's not actually using bones. Now, the reason why I thought it was using bones is because in one of these other files here, it mentions bones. I don't know which one of these programs is actually used. Okay, so you got light face shape, two bones, and then mesh animation. So it looks like these other VXPs handle different animation techniques per mesh, such as faces, soft parts, NMBs, morph targets, the previous VXP, body armor, clothing, bone skinning, this VXP, rigid props, single matrix, no skinning morph. So the different VXPs relate to different parts of Zoltar. So I'm guessing this is part of his cloak. And then the other two are probably more static things like his arms and body. And that's why there's variants of these VXP files. The GeForce 3 and 4 era had tight limits. There was a 2-bone skinning path. It's cheaper than 4-bone. Morph path needs duplicate attributes for pose A and B. Shipping separate programs let artists pick what each mesh could afford. Material pass variants, shadow volumes, depth on environment variants, rim lighting. Each often had a pared down VXP. Fallbacks and LODs. So there's various reasons why they have different VXPs. So we've got the one that morphs between the NMBs, blends between the two poses. You've got the ones that has 2-bone normal map variants, skins, builds the tangent space vectors out to the per pixel lighting, and then this one that just does skins only and per vertex diffuse. So I'm guessing that would be for elements of Zoltar where there's no normal mapping, very basic lighting, or it's just possibly used for the shadowing, possibly. It's output a nice tiny modern GL shader sketch. You can see how different the code looks nowadays. So this is really interesting. It's really good to dive into this stuff, even if it is incredibly complicated. And one day I'm going to have to really get my head around the tangent space and object space stuff, because it's really complicated. But essentially what it allows you to do is calculate the data that you need to run the mathematics on the normal maps and get the data from that for per pixel lighting. And the lower down you go, the simpler these VXPs get, the simpler things they're performing. But I think they're all a blend of both Vertex and pixel shaders, whereas nowadays you get Vertex shaders, pixel shaders, compute shaders, and they're all in different files. So of course, because using AI, I want to make sure this is sourced, so I've done a web search as well. It appears that the pixel shaders are programmable, but they're much more limited to the Vertex shaders. So just looking at some of the research here, there's fixed small number of instruction slots and supported only certain operations, 12 operations in total, 4 texture sampling instructions, 8 color arithmetic instructions, the 1.1 to 1.3 pixel shader limits in DirectX 8, and they're executed in a fixed sequence, but so was the Vertex shader. Texture instructions included things like sampler texture, special texture addressing modes, for cube mapping, only 4 textures in a single pass. And then there are color instructions that allowed basic math like add, multiply, dot product for .3 bump mapping and combining texture samples with constants or interpolated colors. So because of these constraints, pixel shaders were programmable but not fully general purpose. So they're a set of fixed operations that could be assigned to different registers in the assembly code. So I don't think they were quite as versatile as the Vertex shaders at this point, but they were still good enough to do the bump mapping and water effects, EMBM, stuff like that, as well as shadows. So I'll try and chuck as many links as I can into the description for this as I try in real time to work my head around how all these old school shaders worked. But this is some really handy information here. The key part of this demo though is the Vertex shader that does all the movement of Zoltar's face and interpolating between the NMBs and using the structures for the face to animate Zoltar in a semi-realistic way. So yeah, I've essentially got a different set of VXPs here. Some for the more simple stuff like the clothing I'm guessing he's wearing, the body, the more rigid structures that we see on the model, and then all the way up to the more complex ones for rendering shadows and the bump maps, and then ones for, I'm guessing, parts of his clothing that move around with his head, and then the final one that does the full NMB interpolation to actually do all the full animations and then pass all that information to the pixel shaders for .3 bump mapping or normal mapping. So this is probably the most complex one we've seen so far as part of the NVIDIA demos. Got the user interface, which is just the standard we've seen, and all the other ones just part of the GUI. Let's have a look at the textures. So here's the Phong lookup TGA, and it's essentially the same as the one we saw in the Chameleon demo. So you've got this different blend of white to black, and depending what calculation is being done, it picks from that to determine what level of brightness the Phong should be, as opposed to having to compute it in real time. I'm not sure what the cost is for computing Phong in real time versus just having it in this lookup table, but it must be more performant. It must be tricky because of the .3 bump mapping, the extra calculations it has to do, which probably explains why Phong got so much better looking as time went on with programmable shaders and actually calculating this in real time. So we've got the same lights.ifl, which stores all of the cube for the lights. Let's see if any of these actually open up to anything we can actually view this time. So in last week's demo, when we opened this up, we could see, or at least the only ones I could open were the ones that were just all black. But this one, I've actually managed to find one that actually has a dot on it. And I'm guessing this is used for just sampling the directional light using CubeMap. And looks like there's a few lights on this one. I must have just not opened up the right files on last week's one, because there should have been a dot like this that would light up the scene. Whichever one has this dot samples that, uses it as the lighting effect in the pixel shader to essentially give you a directional light. Rather than having a point light in the scene, must just be more efficient that way. So we've got the reflectivity DDS. This looks like a noise map that must just give you the specular effect on his eyeballs to show how much light reflects off each one of these points. Corresponding TGA, which looks basically the same. So there's a TGA and a DDS file in for this. I'm not sure why both formats are in. Could be that the TGAs are for the textures and the DDS are loaded up as part of the pixel pipelines. It's basically all of the textures here. That one's pretty horrendous. So that's your color map for the eyeballs, the mouth, the skin, the hair. And then you've got the bump map. So that's just a standard bump map. That's not even a normal map. There we go, here's the normal map. So there's a bump map and a normal map. And that must get deformed around the NMB as the face moves. That's where the skinning tech must come in to make sure that his mouth moves around with the model. I wonder what the bump map's used for. Bump and a normal map. Could just be for different stages of the lighting pipeline. But you can really see so much more detail that a normal map provides rather than just a bump map. Picture of a texture from his eyeball, which looks horrendous as well. Must wrap around the sphere of the eyeball. And then you've got the mouth colors, DDS. Again, that's just a very simple texture for the gums. And you've got the robe texture there as well, which will be supplemented with a normal map. There's the normal map for the trim of the robe. And there's the normal map for the bit with the NVIDIA symbols on and stuff. That's why those patterns look so detailed, because it's got all that information of exactly which way those pixels are pointing, so it can do all the lighting calculations. The interesting one is the face texture, which doesn't have a lot of detail on it, which makes me think a lot of the work is being done in the pixel shaders there. It's just kind of hair, bit of the skin color. Don't know if there's another texture that has more detail on there. You've got the eyeballs, the face bump, normal maps, color, the gums, mouth, robe, teeth, but not really another one for the face. So yeah, this is more of a color map lookup to help the pixel shader, I think. Then you combine that with the bump map, the normal map, and you get the final output. So that's quite a combination of some of the things we've seen before from Chameleon and Wolfman, but quite a lot more complicated in implementation. Why it's really cool that we can look through the directories here. So yeah, that's the Zoltar demo.
I am Zoltar, the all-knowing, all-seeing, all-powerful.
And as we go through these demos, you kind of learn a lot more and get a lot more intuition for how the graphics models worked, especially back in the day, and how it sort of evolved into the modern day rendering pipeline. Kind of learning in real time. Really hope they bring these demos back, because the last NVIDIA demo was, 6 years ago? Ray tracing demo, and they haven't done any since. So it'd be really cool to bring these back, especially these weird, creepy demos. But it's interesting to see that shaders of the time were assembly rather than high-level shader code of now, which I think is close to C++. I really hope this series keeps going and keeps getting viewers, because I really want NVIDIA to make these demos again. So if this could get really popular, that would really help. So leave a like, subscribe, hit the little bell, really helps. Leave a comment, let me know what you think. And check out the resource in the description to try and learn more about how these graphics work. And thanks for watching. Hope everyone's staying safe, and I will leave you with a last word from Zoltar.
The greatest pleasure in life is doing what people say you can't do.